I was hacked. On this episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning, we'll talk about what happened to me and how you can prevent it from happening to you. Hi, I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel, and I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shear. I have a family financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. And before we dig into how you can avoid going through what Bridget went through, I want to remind everybody to hit that subscribe button. When you subscribe, it helps other people on YouTube find this content and helps us in the algorithms there. And with that, Bridget, I know you mentioned that you had this hacking issue going on. I'm really interested to hear what exactly happened and what you did about it, and more importantly, how we can help people avoid going through the same thing. What's the deal?
Well, first of all, I want to mention that this is with bank accounts right now. Hacking evidently is on the increase. Credit cards have adopted those chips, which evidently are harder to hack and defraud people with. And so credit card protections have gotten better, and the credit card companies have gotten better at catching it. So the thieves have moved on to banks. And so this is hitting banks particularly hard. So I just want to make sure that people understand that, of course, being careful with your credit card is awesome, but we're going to be focused on how you can do to protect what you can do to protect yourself with your bank.
Great. Yeah, great.
Okay. So here's what happened to me. First of all, mine was quite old fashioned. Okay. The whole way they got my information was very old fashioned. Okay. It was not tech. It was not actually, I don't think it was that difficult. And I don't know for sure. So there's going to be some speculation, but I won't name any names. So hopefully nobody will come back at me. Okay. So I had to drop off a check at a professional's. Okay. The professional was not there. And so, first of all, it was a series of two checks. The first check, it was like, put it through the slot in the door. Okay. So I put my check through the slot in the door in an envelope. Second check, there was somebody there and who was another professional. And so I said, okay, I'm dropping this off for so-and-so. And they said, fine. And I was like, you know what? I just want to make sure I filled it up, that I did the check right. And so I opened the envelope and I checked to see how I had made out the check. And she's like, yeah, she took the check and she put it in the back, kind of on a pile of stuff. And there was a lot of stuff around. Okay. Fast forward. Now maybe it wasn't all this, but fast forward a week or two later, I happen to be very mindful right now about checking my bank account. And actually the amount was over $6,900. And all the person did was copy the check. They used the next check number and they made it out to somebody else and they put in the amount and they totally forged my signature, but it didn't look that bad. I then got a call that was just kind of weird. I think we're all getting a lot of calls that are scams now, right? And so usually you try to not answer them and just let it go to your voicemail, right? And hope but anyway, I picked this one up. And the person said that it was from Capital One and they wanted to verify a check. And I do actually do some work with Capital One, but I don't have a checking account there. So I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, started asking me questions. I was like, who are you?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why are you calling me? How did you get my number? That I don't have what this, I do not, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm done.
Yeah.
And I hung up on the person. And I asked her honestly, and this was a good, astute question. Can I call you back? What Capital One must have a phone number I can call you back on for whatever this is. Okay, so that was over. And I still to this day don't know if that was legit or not, but the check the fraudsters did try to deposit it into Capital One. Okay. Now, Capital One, you can deposit a check on your phone. And I don't know what their limits are, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were $7,000.
Yeah, right.
Check, right? So Yeah. So then I looked at and I saw like, wow, this looks wrong. As soon as I like clicked on my bank account and saw like somebody I didn't recognize at all. And so I immediately called my bank and then started handling it with my bank. Okay. Next day, look at my check account again, and fraudsters are trying to pay their Comcast bill with my
Yeah.
with the account number. I'm like, and I actually don't have a Comcast account right now. So yeah, so that was easy to shut down. And then the bank immediately stopped payments on these items. The Comcast they could take out right away because I told, I was like, what's this immediately? So they didn't pay it right away. But the other one they had kind of honored, they put it in sort of temporary honor system. And so that was a whole nother thing. But then somebody at the bank was calling me. We were talking every day to see like, is this okay? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And I work with a local bank. So that'll be another interesting thing for you and I to talk about is the local banks versus like a big national bank. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I work with a local bank is because I want actual bankers. And I feel like a lot of the big national banks, you have to call their 800 number and hope for the best,
Yeah.
And so I want somebody who I can call. I actually honor my grandfather was a banker and I honor the profession of banking. I think it's a profession. It's a good profession. So I like working with bankers. So that was another aspect of it. Eventually it took about 30 days for me to get refunded for the money was taken out of my account. And then it took about 30 days to get back. And the banker that I talked to said they have 60. So
Okay.
once you ask me your questions, we'll get into a little bit of the how to avoid this, but also what to do again.
Ultimately, you didn't lose any money. Is that what at
Correct.
the end of the day? Okay.
That
Okay.
is right.
And one of the things, as you mentioned before, credit cards, there's protections with the chips
Right.
and with other things, and with things like debit cards and bank accounts, that's not always the case, right? And so,
Well, with debit cards, I think you have to catch it a lot faster. So I think you
okay.
want to make sure that you tell them within 30 to 60 days. But they don't, it's not like a credit card where they have to say, oh, okay, we'll convict, we'll assume that
Yeah.
this is all going to go through. They can wait. They don't, and what I looked up is that they don't even, there's no definite time frame for them to have to refund you the money.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and you said this right at the beginning, but I just wanted to circle back on that this wasn't some high tech necessarily endeavor. This was probably a physical check that
Probably in this case.
got into a place where I know that we've seen a lot of things about check washing, they call it, where they can get the regular ballpoint ink pen off of a check and then write different things in that
Well, with
things.
Photoshop,
Yeah.
these days it wouldn't be hard.
But it oftentimes it seems so much more reliable to physical. Like I would walk a check of any size over right to a player. Right, you walk in, you hand it to somebody. Golly, you feel good about that, and that's not always the safest place. I think that's a really important point to bring out here. Can you talk a little bit about? And I've got several things that bounce around in my head as you were describing this. But so what sort of things, and you mentioned having a local bank, but all right, how do you avoid this? How do I avoid this? And the viewers in the future, what steps do you take so you don't have to go through this?
Well, I would have resealed and I would have made sure the envelope was sealed, the
Hmm.
second envelope. That's the biggest thing on my side that I would say I do differently. Like
Yeah,
it was, so it could be anybody that walked into this office. And again, the office didn't seem super secure to me.
yeah,
And the other thing is that I would urge, in this case, I couldn't pay with a credit card, but I would urge people to use their credit cards, you have a lot more um, protections. And
yeah,
so that is a reason to use credit cards, particularly versus debit cards or Zelle and Venmo. Those are actually even worse protections than your debit card. So be mindful of that. Like that you're putting yourself more at risk when you use those different forms of payment. The other thing I think that I did right was looking at my bank account. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode is because people need to really be looking at the bank account. Like sometimes a lot of people don't. I mean, I got to admit, I'm not always the best at it. Like I'll just, I'll kind of eyeball it. And again, $6,900, I would notice. And even Comcast, like, I would notice. But I would say at least for the next year or two, I would urge people to be more careful about looking at their bank statements than they have been in the past. The same that you've been looking at your credit card statement. Okay, it's just really look right. Reconciling your bank statement. Geez, if you want to, I don't know what percentage of Americans reconcile their bank statements, but if you do, you would find this.
I'm glad you didn't ask me if I do that on a monthly basis. So we'll skip over that and just take your advice and moving forward, be smart about that. And because I think a lot of people don't, and I know that I'm not as good at that as I should. And here's something that's really a high risk thing, right? And an easily identifiable thing. It doesn't take very long to go through your bank statements on a month, their checking account statements, right? And it's one of those simple things that's easy to slip by. And if you hadn't been paying attention to this, you might be past the 60 days. Again, bigger number, a little bit different things, but you can have some of these frauds on a lower level and be out hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars over a period of time without really paying attention if you're not on top of it. So I think that's a really great idea. Well, tell me go into depth a little bit, if you would, about having a local bank versus a national bank. And I think I know where you're coming from, but what was the difference and what was the benefit for you of that?
For me, the benefit was that I had somebody personal that I could call and tell them about it. And then they could be communicating with other people. And I didn't feel like if I do business with big banks too, like my mortgage is with a big bank, et cetera. But I felt like I wouldn't have that person talking. I wouldn't have a person to call at all times. And then there's been other things. My banking needs are higher right now. And so I'm just really glad that I have people to call right now. I mean, this is why I have a local bank, and I'm not my experience with big banks is that my joke is that they think that 99% of transactions can be handled by a teller. And so all they have is tellers, and they have nobody which I don't want to cast aspersion on tellers, but they don't know everything about. A teller can't help me with this except for to go to somebody else. So they try to keep people not knowing what's going on. I feel like, or not higher up on the level. And this I felt like was great. The other thing I think about local banks, and this gets into a whole different ball of wax, but local banks, their marketing and their focus is on developing the local community. Whereas bigger banks, not that none of them ever focus on the local community, but they tend to focus on the bigger companies. And so, and the bigger players, if you are lucky enough to get more money, you'll get more offers from all these other banks that are doing all this. And it's like, I like banks that are focused on the local community. And that's another reason I like a local bank.
Well, Bridget, thanks so much for sharing your personal story. Glad it had a good ending for you. And, great takeaways for our viewers here is pay attention to those bank accounts, even more than you have before, and consider having a local bank, somebody you can talk to, can act as an advocate for you if you're unfortunate enough to be in that same spot. I think it's a great place to wrap things up here.
One more thing I want to say, John, is I found AARP to be a great resource in this regard.
Awesome. I would not have considered that. Great plug for AARP on that to help you out with things. So, well, hey, I'm John Shear. I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. John and I are both taking new clients. However, if you're interested in a local advisor in your area, we belong to the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners, or ACP. It's a group of tax-focused financial planners that work, they're fiduciaries and work in a comprehensive manner all over the country. So you can check out acplanners.org.
And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.